Well, hey there. Thanks for coming to Corbin. And those of you that are at Corbin. Looking forward to this. Looking forward to what we have to do in the next hour. And this is a topic that I've been speaking about and going to conferences and talking about a lot for a long time. Kind of explain later why and all that kind of stuff. But this QR code, by the way, if you go to it, it goes to the different presentations I've done over the last few weeks and months on these topics, and then the handouts and other resources and stuff. Just that's kind of where I house everything on my website, so that my goal is for some of you, even watch it, find a way to make it yours and you use it, that kind of thing. So I have a lot of even our youth pastors at our church that I've spoken once and then they've taken what I did and ran with it. And so I've been really proud to watch them use it and make it theirs. So a few years ago, my two sons and I were skiing. So they were about, this is like 2000, I think I saw on the thing, 2018. We were at Hoodoo, and it was the end of the season, the last day. And so we're skiing, we're having a great time, and this girl comes flying down the hill topless. And a quite large, endowed young lady, right towards Alex. I'm like, oh, great. Blaze, luckily, my younger one was somewhere else. I'm like, he would have just laughed and pointed and he would have thought it was hilarious. Alex, so I chased after him, got down to the lift and caught up with him. And I was like, you okay? He goes, no. Like, how was it? He's like, stop it, don't ask me that. I said, first time? Yes. And so we started talking about it, and it led to, because one of those conversations is, when is my kid going to look at porn? I'm not going to show it to him. But it was even one of those questions I had when they were younger. I teach this stuff, I talk about this stuff, I counsel in this area. It's kind of, we talk about this stuff at the table, the dinner table, all the time. So it's like a normal conversation is about these issues. This allowed for us to have a conversation about what's her story? Why would she do that? What's her family like? To humanize, which is really critical. About the same year, I took my kids, all three of my kids. Careful what movies you go see, and if you don't preview them ahead of time. I took my three kids to see Ready Player One, and we're in this theater. There's a scene in there that I was like, kind of not. It pushed it a little too far for me having my kids there. But what was fun was afterwards. I asked my kids. I was like, what about this certain scene? And so in Ready Player One, there's a scene where they're in the virtual world. And this girl in the red dress comes out. It's very tight fitting. So they're interacting. It's a very sensual moment. And so my oldest is about 12, 13, and my daughter, who's about 7 or 8 at the time. My oldest was like, I was so uncomfortable sitting there next to Dad, watching this. Blaze was just like totally obsessed about at the end where the guy gets kicked in the crotch. And thought that was hilarious. And my daughter was like, what a beautiful dress. How we all have a different perspective on even the same moment. And how we interpret this stuff and having conversations are really important. And I saw this stat yesterday, actually. Approximately 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 10 boys ages 13 and 17 report sharing their own nudes, according to a 2020 report. We have to talk about this stuff. We cannot. And I have parents all the time push me and basically say, they're not old enough. I'm like, actually, I want to be the first person. I don't want my teachers, I want teachers or anyone else or friends at school or the internet to be the teacher. I want you to be the first person. And so part of that's equipping. The book I wrote of, I Can't Say That, is for parents to help equip them to know what I believe. That's the starting point. As a mom and dad, grandparent, and as leaders too, how do I know what I believe? Because a lot of times we don't. On my YouTube channel, I have a lot of explanations of this, but I talk through created order, the disorder, and then you. And I walk through looking at Scripture, and I want to kind of just give you a highlight of that as we then get into those age-appropriate conversations. And this is all stuff you know, but what's the created order? Created order is God created man. Genesis 1:27, so God created mankind in his own image, in the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. Which is a really important starting point, especially today. The UK finally figured out what a woman is as of today, so it's so good to know. That was confusing up until today, but now we've got it cleared up. But one of the things also I see in family culture is another word that is a difficulty, and it's the word work. And one of the things that I love to point out is look when work started and it was pre-fall. We have a disordered, oftentimes, relationship with work. And so it's something that we want to delay. And it's like, no, actually kids working younger, learning to work and learning to produce and learning to be proud of what they do is actually a very valuable asset. Saw a report today about a new study on ADHD that basically is saying what we're doing is wrong, it's not working, and actually what would help them would be busier schedules and actually work and to love what they do. So finding their niche, because making them study math when they don't like math, last I checked, is not the most exciting thing. But when they find, hey, I love science, or I love art, or I love, it changes everything. But this work piece is where we start with a lot of what we're going to talk about later. And then what happened? God created a woman. The Lord God said, it is not good for man to be alone. I'll make a helper suitable for him. But he went through a process. He had Adam name the animals, and I think he kind of like delayed it to kind of accentuate this whole thing. It's like, I'm going to make this amazing partner for you. That then began the process or the beginning of what isn't a social construct like it's talked about today, but marriage, something that he designed from the beginning. The man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh. And the part that we have to emphasize now, and it's sad to say, but it's two sexually different people. That is marriage. There is no other combination, no other combination. That is marriage, one man, one woman. And then Adam and his wife were both naked and they felt no shame. So this is building that foundation. We want to start with this when we talk with parents, families, and obviously where we're at too. Part of the marriage piece, that I guess a conversation piece I would give for you is this book right here, Preston Sprinkle. Does the Bible support same-sex marriage? It's 21 conversations from a historically Christian view where basically it lays out a topic, an argument for same-sex marriage. He then says, here's my areas of agreement, which is a really great way to have this conversation. And then he goes, and here's where you're wrong. And does a great job unpacking why the historical Christian view is the one that actually is lasting, is true, and will actually help people flourish. It's such a great resource for us to begin if you are a reader or like to read books like this. Yay, the best day of my life. 22 years ago. So cool. But what happens when this happens? This happens sometimes. The combination of getting married creates little mini-me's. This is our church directory photograph. The best we could do at the time. Very indicative of the relationships there. And then they just start growing up and having adventures. And it's amazing because we didn't think we would have kids. So when my wife found out she was pregnant, she was actually mad because she had already settled in her heart that we would not be able to. And so it's been amazing, this adventure with these three, I call them experiments. All the stuff we've been able to do is incredible. Why? Because we live in a world that's got disorder. It's broken. Well, what's the disorder? We know what it is. It's sin. And if you look back at Genesis, the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good and for food and pleasing to the eye, also desirable for gaining wisdom. She took some and ate it, and she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. They both failed here miserably. Who got the instructions? Adam. Who failed to lead here? Adam. This is an utter failure. This is the beginning of where we're at, what we know too well. But another thing also was birthed here, and it was the blame game that we don't let go of. We love to blame culture, government, mom and dad, especially mom. We love to blame. It's so sad how we love to do exactly what's the woman you put here, the serpent. Like we love that, and we're still playing that game. But yet here, it was a helper fail and leadership fail. The man will struggle with and return to the earth, and woman will have pain in childbirth and struggle with man. So there's an order too, and then there's disorder. And when we think of you and I, we think of our children, and we think of those we're serving. Psalm 139, for you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. And how beautiful these verses are in the next verse. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. And you talk to parents and families who have difficult kids or struggling kids or handicapped in some way, physically, mentally, and how it's a struggle, but also for so many, I wouldn't trade my life that I have with this child or what this child's done for me. What I love to see is when you think of these children that are a little more difficult even, how much it shapes the whole family. And so you then later see, because my brother or sister was this or struggled with this, I'm now going into the medical field, or I'm now going into the legal field, or I'm now going into counseling or ministry, oftentimes because of people that they didn't have a choice to have in their family, which is amazing. Now, what is our call? Put to death, Colossians 3:5, therefore whatever belongs to your earthly nature. That is our call. Yet our world is saying exactly the opposite. You are whatever you feel. Yet we know what's true here. The hard part a lot of times is teaching that, conveying that, convincing. When I would have a booth at the homeschool conference, we homeschool our kids, and I would watch moms just walk right by me. They wouldn't pay attention to me at all, because I have a book about sex and gender, and they have a little baby. And I'm like, no, you're my audience. I want you starting at 1 year old and 2 years old and 3 years old, having conversations that prepare them. And then I do like my talk, and then all of a sudden they all come. We have conversations, and not out of fear, but out of equipping, because we want to act like our kids are innocent. Yet I've been in homes, homeschool family homes, where they've protected their kids like crazy, and they can't understand why their son's molesting their daughter. We don't have a TV. Great. He's a sinner. Welcome to reality. Oh, so frustrating. And so helping them see that's not the answer, yet a lot of times we think it is. It's some decision that's made that protects my kids. When you follow the desires of your sinful nature, we know these lists, pretty much all these lists, we all fall into them. It is clear who we're going to be. But what is our calling? But the Holy Spirit produces this kind of fruit in our lives: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. This is who we're meant to be. And then 2 verses later, those who belong to Christ Jesus have nailed the passions and desires to their sinful nature to the cross. This is who we're meant to be. And so how do we paint that picture, and how do we have conversations that are so awkward and so difficult? Especially when you and I know as leaders, as parents, as grandparents, as husbands, wives, that we actually are self-centered bent. I honestly don't think marriage works. We have 2 people who think they're right all the time. But wait, so how does marriage work? It's when I actually learn to die to myself, when I learn to listen, I learn to grow and learn from you, where I tell my students all the time, please marry well. Because if you don't, it's really miserable. Get a partner you can just do life with and you look forward to doing life with, because it makes life so much better. And so I wrote these books, this first one for parents. My favorite one, this one I wrote, this is my teenage son, I wrote for kids and teens, and I have families that will actually use this as a devotional. In each chapter there's questions in Scripture to talk through, because the goal is not to tell you what to believe, it's to help you think through what you believe. And so one of my best reviews of this book was a 18-year-old saying, thank you for not telling me what to believe, but helping me think through it. And I was like, that's what I was hoping to do. It's so exciting. Why? Because here's the scary statement. Either I do or someone else does. It's going to be someone at school. It's going to be porn. It's going to be the internet. It's going to be someone else. Mom and Dad, we have to talk about this. A few years ago, California enacted a law that you have to teach all 15 genders in kindergarten. I don't know where they got 15 from, because Facebook is there and there's like 95 on there, and so they need to talk and it's crazy. They need to catch up to the 90 some others. But I actually had parents say, I can't talk to my kids. And I'm like, so it's okay for your teacher in kindergarten to do it, but you're not. Like, think about this. Your kid needs to walk into kindergarten knowing what they're going to face. And laugh. This is my interpretation. Laugh at those that actually think there are more than 2. And then you're proud of them when they end up in the principal's office and all that kind of stuff. Rather than, and this is what I'm seeing happen, they hear at school and they come home and go, Mom and Dad, you're so old school. Mom, you're not up to the times. Because I'm wondering, I don't know if this is true, but I'm wondering if kids really grab onto what they hear first. We have to talk about this earlier. I've talked to families and friends where they say, my kid's really immature, especially boys, 14, 15, they're immature. They're still playing with Nerf guns. I'm like, so am I. So I don't understand that. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh shoot, they're 18 and I missed it. I missed the boat. I was like, yeah, you did. It's never too late, but the conversations are very different when they're 11 or 12 than when they're 17, 18. They're really different when they're 6 or 7 and you're planting seeds than when they're actually 16 and you're arguing with them as to whether they should date. Now, a book that really shaped our thinking and I think really is a good influence on us and I recommend reading is this one, Calling of the American Mind, 2019. Talks about 3 bad ideas. Avoid adversity at all costs. Always trust your emotions and the world is black and white. It's a very sickening view. Our kids are anti-fragile. We need to actually strengthen them. How do you do that? They built the biodome. They've tried it, I think, 3 times. And they put trees in the biodome, and then eventually the trees fell over. Why? They were missing one key element that actually strengthens trees. It's called stress from the wind. Our kids need to grow by trying things, attempting things, falling, scraping a knee, all those kinds of things. 3 bad ideas. Our kids are fragile. Actually, not really. Not to the extent we actually act like today. And I'll show you in a minute why. Safetyism. Protect, protect, protect. And then oppressor, oppressed. This is what's being taught in most counseling centers now, or counseling programs. What's being taught in our counseling programs is you are either oppressed or the oppressor. There are no other options. And it's destroying families. It's destroying the fabric, I think, of our world. I honestly would not trust a lot of counselors these days because of what's being taught when it comes to this model here. So this is a really important, Jonathan Haidt, we'll see his name in a second again. 2020, there was a Netflix show, The Social Dilemma. Highly recommend it. Sit down, watch it as a family. Watch it as a church and have conversations. It's just a conversation starter as to these people the guy that invented the like button I thought I was actually doing something good, not creating monsters. And I regret everything I ever did in my career. And how many of them actually say, our kids don't have smartphones, our kids don't have iPads. And so that's an important one. Another one, though, is Childhood 2.0 on YouTube. Actually starts off interviewing parents saying, what's your biggest concern and fear for your kids? And they're like, anything outside of our house. This is a dangerous world. And they're like, we probably live in the safest time in history. What's actually the most dangerous? That cable connected to your house. And what's happening probably 5 feet from you in your same room, in the living room, with that screen turned slightly away from you. That's the Xbox. It's stuff in the house that's causing more damage. And that's the documentary walks through the impact of internet gaming, the online gaming, the grooming. And I saw another report this week, the increase of young boys killing themselves because of sextortion. That's on the increase. It's been happening for a long time. But these are really great things to do as a group, with church family, with parents, to actually have conversations. Now in 2024, this book came out. This one was a game changer. It has probably caused more change than we've seen in a long time. Last year it came out. More schools this year are becoming phone free because of him. Why? Because he basically didn't say, stop giving your kids phones. Instead he said, we need to, as a group, do something. It needs to be groupthink. Like if your kid's in school and they're the only one without a phone, that's a problem usually. It really is a struggle. If half the class doesn't have one, it changes things. If we're using Discord, that's fine. Well, it's not fine for the ones that are over here doing other stuff they shouldn't with it. So having a boundary around that is important. So what did he find with this play-based childhood versus now the phone-based childhood? These numbers are scary. And one part of what he said was, this isn't coming from COVID. It's pre-COVID. COVID amplified a lot of stuff. We like to blame that season for it. And it's like, no, this started before. And it started around 2012. What happened in 2012? Facebook bought Instagram. Instagram became the center for so many young girls especially. And we'll see for boys in a minute a difference there. But we have this skyrocketing of problem, of struggle of the younger generation. Less so for We used to say millennials are a lost cause, and now we're like going, good job, y'all are catching up, you're doing really well, because we're looking at Gen Z and Alpha going, holy smokes, what do we do? A neat change, though, is there's a lot of Gen Z and Alphas who are rebelling against their parents and saying, hey, I want marriage, and I want to be a parent. So the tide's turning maybe there, and we want to nurture that as well. Anxiety is on the rise. Self-harm is on the rise for girls. What's the key factor here? Comparison. Instagram. That's a big one, and we need to address that and talk about this earlier, not where it's too late. Suicide. Now, girls try it more, but boys tend to go for more lethal. So this is so prevalent, and it's increasing, not decreasing. And we see how there's a lot of really good technologies that have come into existence and they've kind of taken over our world. Well, smartphone is the new one in a sense. We know that. There's no way to not know that at this point. A great tool. I love that we can have these tools, but yet for most of us it's a game device, or it's actually, I call them porn portals. It's like, here, I love you, child. Here's a porn portal. That's what I feel like is what we're doing, not intending to do. And so how to talk through that's really important. So what he does in this book is the 5 foundational harms. Opportunity cost 7 to 9 hours a day. That number is, I've seen up to 15 hours a day of online, disengaged from human contact, on everything's screen. Social deprivation, this is drastically dropping off the desire to be with friends, the desire to be in person with people, which is important to think of. Sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, and then addiction. We know this. How do we address this in the church? How do we address this with our people? How do we have conversations is really important, because central today really is anxiety. Now, I think we need to reframe anxiety. And I could spend hours talking about anxiety. To me, anxiety is something that we don't want to eliminate. I want you anxious when you walk into my test, especially if you didn't study. Yeah, we're looking to be anxiety-free. That's called not being human. You see that dog walk around the corner, you need to have this anxious response, this prepare to run if needed, or drop to your knees and play with it. I don't know, whichever one you do. The anxiety is important, so our relationship with. So that's a phrase I use a lot in my classes. It's a relationship with. And so how do we learn to have a different relationship with anxiety where it's actually an asset and a tool, not this thing to drug. But along with this, we have depression, self-harm, suicide, loneliness. There's been a lot of interesting studies on loneliness recently. Just kind of almost saying that we are, but we're not, which is interesting to think about. As in, we are, but it's amazing how many don't realize it. Why? Because my little hits on my phone is just enough dopamine to almost keep me breathing, but it's not life-giving, which is really scary. We have very, very addicted or lost, where I don't realize how lonely I am. And really is what we're doing working is a question. Why does a biblical sexual ethic matter? Romans 1 here. Therefore God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator who is forever praised. Amen. Because of this, God gave them over to shameful lusts. And then verse 32, it kind of gets worse. Although they know God's righteous decree, they know it, that those who do such things deserve death. We don't really pay attention to that part a lot of times. We like to ignore that. They not only continue to do these very things, but they also approve of those who practice them. As Christians, I feel like we've been sometimes quiet and even complicit with things that are not okay. So how do we help empower, strengthen, give options in some sense? Stephen Covey said this: if you don't make a conscious effort to visualize who you are and what you want in life, then you empower other people and circumstances, including addictions, to shape you and your life by default. This is we need to help purpose. And I think of talking to high school students, and it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? That's the question. It's like, there's 50-year-olds that can't figure that out. wrong question. Where does God want to use you? Because my favorite is when all mom and dad and families see this kid and they're talented here and they need to go that way, and God's going tap, tap, tap that way. I hope you'll follow God's call. That's a difficult one. What if I don't feel like I have anything? Well, that's where we get lost. I have a young man right now who attempted suicide a few weeks ago, and I'm worried because we cannot at all, mom, anyone, find purpose. Nothing to live for. School's stupid. Duh. We've heard that a million times. But everything is. Mom's religion is stupid. It gets kind of scary when you get down to that I'm suicidal and or no purpose. Yet this is what we're creating. This is the norm now. And you see this everywhere. My wife and I were on a date one time at Chili's and looked over next to us, and there were a whole bunch of college students. At the end of the table were like 10 iPhones stacked up. And at one point, someone had to go to the bathroom, so this one girl passed them all back out. Everyone checked. And then when the last person came out the bathroom, she's like, come on. And piled up the iPhones. And they'd make a noise, and everybody'd look. But they were present. It was fun to just kind of sit there and watch them. And then I heard someone recently say, whoever touches their phone first has to pay. And I think that is just a great, because this is not okay. I actually used to love going to the dentist or doctor's office and talking to people. Now you're like a freak if you do that, because you've interrupted someone's bejeweled time or whatever crazy thing. So what are actually influencing our kids? If you think of the online influences and what's stunting our growth, actually probably preventing growth, for boys is very different than girls. And one of the number one is porn. Porn has changed everything. Too accessible, easily accessible. But in some sense, I wish it was what it used to be. Wish it was pictures. It's not. It's graphic video, oftentimes from the beginning, from ages 6, 7, 8. Not like 15. And so the shaping of the mind, the heart, and then the 20-year-old men, boys really, who can't get an erection is increasing because they've been desensitized, and so the normal, real thing isn't good enough. The other one is excessive video game play. I mean, we have an Xbox room at our house. I'm not saying games are wrong or bad. We actually have a room with multiple screens and Xboxes, but it's what you do with those. Or if I'm playing and someone says, hey, let's go play outside, no, I'd rather stay here. Okay, that's where we say, this is done. There needs to be like some switch. And I think it's called the big breaker box. Click. It takes care of it all. But this is a problem. With boys wearing diapers to play games an hour after, like for 20, 30 hours at a time. Yes, really, really, I am obsessed. This is the extreme, if you will. But another big one is absent fathers. Almost every school shooter that's walked into a school and done what they've done had a really disordered relationship with their dad or absent dad. Another key thing that most of those young men had were they were marijuana users, by the way. You don't see that in the news reports because we can't mess with the agenda to destroy our world with a numbing substance. Because marijuana works. It's great if that's what you want to do, escape and not be functional. But these young men were, and many of them were incels, which means what? Involuntary celibate. And so it's like these are young men who really struggled socially and then became embittered and then entitled and then felt they were owed a girl, which is creepy on every level. We need discipleship. We need training. We need some building up of these young men. And so a key person actually is their father. More things stunning our growth: irresponsibility, skillless. Something breaks, learn to fix it. My son's radiator went out a few weeks ago. He ordered one, and I observed him. I watched him. I stood around him as he fixed it. It's called YouTube now. Figure it out. I'm here to help, but like you start learning these skills, and it really changes your. Right now, I have a van that's up on rails. I can't figure it out myself. I'm going to one of these days. It's been weeks, but I can't get my brakes to come back. I've bled them. But it's giving an example to my kids too, if we're going to figure this out. And then social media. Social media has changed everything. Part of Jonathan Haidt's, and I'll have this later, but Jonathan Haidt's thing is basically no social media till 18. We need to change our relationship with social media as kids. What's sad a lot of times is a lot of youth groups even that use social media. And it's been interesting to watch even our youth group, our kids in it, to see what communication worked for a while, and then man, it's changing so fast. Like Instagram post worked, and all of a sudden there's no response, and it's interesting to see. It's hard to keep up with that because this is what's happening. We are getting lost. But what's scary to me for moms and dads is we're often not the best example. And if we're not a good example, we don't have good reign of this. We're on our phone. When Alex was little, my oldest, I was bedridden a lot with health issues. But he'd come over to the couch and try to pull me off the couch to play. And I couldn't. It was such a hard season. But if he saw me open my laptop, as that laptop opened, he'd just start crying. He's 19, a long time ago. And that's very indicative of a problem that has only gotten worse now, where kids just know mom and dad are poor stewards of this. So how we talk about this stuff is important. And to me, it comes down to this idea of sex ed. This is a key responsibility of parents, not the church. So I would say even as churches, how do we empower parents? Yes, the church parents can defer to the church and we can partner with you. But what I found even from other studies recently is a lot of kids, if you think of counseling, what happens is I form a bond with this kid as a counselor, and now I am actually against the mom and dad too. I align with the child. And so one of the things that I do now is I do not work with kids or teens by themselves more than a session or two. It's now with mom and dad. Why? I want to strengthen that alliance. I do not want one with me. And so I've changed everything I've done because to me that's the bond I want strengthened. Does that always happen? No, because some have really sick situations. And we have to adapt to those. Those are difficult. Those are different. And you probably have some in your youth groups and in your church body where we have to find a different way because there isn't. But this is where we start. Mom and dad, key. Because again, I said already, the point, either I do or someone else does. So where do we start with this? Birth to 5. I call these in my book Micro Conversations, and I realized that they aren't. When they're younger, at this age, they are a little bit, and then as they get older, they're little mini lectures. And so part of what I've seen with moms and dads who the kids won't respond back, they end up shutting up. I'm like, no, you don't ever stop. You keep planting seeds. You keep planting seeds. You keep planting seeds. And so at birth to 5, where we don't think about this at all, what do we start doing? It's rarely too early. We need to remember that. We don't want to, if I teach them something, it's going to do this to them. No, not necessarily. Actually, in their brain, if you teach them about sex and penis, vagina, and all this, they're going to be like, what? I don't understand this. One day we were sitting at the dinner table, and my daughter, who's the youngest little girl here, she has heard us talk, and all of a sudden one day she's like, penis, vagina? No. And we all burst out laughing because her brain finally had a place to file it. Before then, it's like, this is just, what in the world are you talking about? And so at this beginning stage is basic anatomy and the correct body part vocabulary. My daughter one time stood up in the bathtub and grabbed herself, and she's like, my bottom hurts. I'm like, that's not your bottom. My wife was like, I don't know what to call it. Kelly, it's called a vulva. We use the right terms. Why? Because when there's trauma, when there's damage, we want them to use the right words. That's when we want them to use the right words, not these euphemisms or these nicknames we've given because we're uncomfortable. We want correct body part vocabulary. Be sure not to stereotype what is boy or girl, but emphasize they are a boy or girl. Crazy to say it that way, but it's true. I spent my whole young adult life confused about this because everything I liked was not normal. And so I really questioned myself all growing up. And what was funny is then I met this woman that I married in my late 20s, where I felt God had abandoned me. And I meet Kelly, and it's like my life made sense now. And one of the reasons why is because she's the guy and I'm the girl on so many measuring sticks. I'm the emotional basket case. She's the former legal person. She's linear thinker. She's very intellectual. And it's like we make sense. And now I see I'm so the guy and she's so the girl, and God is so good. But before I met her, it's like others were saying, "You're something wrong with you." Because I don't like sports and didn't want to talk about politics and didn't want to talk about all these dumb things that all the guys want to talk about, and didn't do what other guys did. And I was a music major in college. That didn't help. Questioning. And a lot of young men, a lot of young ladies are questioning. And that's not a bad thing. And that they're loved by God and their family. You know, when kids, like with the stereotypes, when they do certain things and they like certain things, it stereotypes them. But here's the irony. If you are really good at cooking, what do we tend to think about? Male or female? Female. But yet, who are the ones that tend to have the shows? The famous ones, male. Artists and sculptors, and to do that, well, that's a girl thing. Yet it's men who have. It's interesting to think about this. Where do we get this? It's social. It's family even. There's some families, it's like, if you're in this family, you like football. And it's like, what do you do when that kid comes out that's like, yeah, that's dumb. You're dead to me. That kind of thing. What do you do with that? Recognize that brothers and sisters, parents, friends, bodies are different. And then begin teaching about appropriate touch towards and from others is important. What about the bodies are different? One of the things we would do, we had lots of babysitters that our kids growing up. And when I would get back from on a date with Kelly or something, I'd ask our kids, especially Miley, did they touch you? Did they do anything, changing your diaper, anything? And I had these conversations every time. And I would say it in class, because it was college students that were babysitting my kids. So they knew I was saying this. What was I looking for? I was not looking for them to tell me the truth. I was looking for a change in their response from the last 100 times I've asked it. Versus never asking these questions and then wishing I had later. One day we came back, and our babysitter Mariana, she's from Moldova, sweet girl who's now a trauma therapist. But she was like freaking out. We walked in the door, and my oldest son had taken her flip phone and had snapped a picture of his penis. It was on her phone, and she's like, "I deleted it. I'm so sorry." It's like, you didn't do anything wrong. Mariana. This kid will be having some conversations. So we had to talk to that. But what's scary is, especially now with smartphones, one picture, it's not in your power anymore. It's immediately to a cloud, and it's out there forever. Like it's not a benign thing. Yet one of the things that's increasing among 30 to 50-year-olds is actually sexting. So it's interesting to think about not understanding how just one picture, once it's there and it's on a device, it is no longer yours. It's a free-for-all. We have these books on our kids, just in their mess of books, and so when they would ask questions, we'd go grab one. The older ones were a lot prettier than these colored ones from Stan Jones. But we would have them read through the book. And so they'd ask a question, and we'd go, "Oh, here's the book." And we'd read, thinking they're going to ask these deep questions at this age. And usually it was some just little thing that made them think about it, and then they're off to the races and didn't really care. And so realizing that a lot of times their curiosity isn't as deep as you think yet. But then what do you do when it is? This one was a really critical book. Good pictures, bad pictures. Secular author, which is fine, but it talks about the fact that there are good pictures, bad pictures, but then it talks about a concept that one day I walked out to the front yard, and Blaze, my middle guy, was standing on the front yard, and he was kind of doing this. I'm like, "Blaze, what are you thinking?" He goes, "Dad, my feeling brain says I want to go across the street to the park, but my thinking brain tells me I'll get in trouble. Here's your neuroscience degree." That sums it up right there. And that's literally from this book where he just understood there's a thinking brain and a feeling brain. So simple, but he knew right there something very, very helpful in terms of the way I'm wired, and I'm going to have this pull. And as I get older, the pull gets harder. My oldest son, when he got back from college over Christmas, one of the first things he said was, Dad, I haven't looked at porn one time. Why would he say that voluntarily? Why? Because we ask and check in all the time. How are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? And there were seasons he wouldn't answer us. Keep checking in, keep checking in. Not because I like the topic, it's because I love him. And I move it out of his unconscious to his conscious, which is where I take thoughts captive. And even more powerful is that third level, which is confession. Back here, things are just habit. And I want to move stuff out of habit into responsibility, which is really important. Now, this next age is the most important one. And see, we haven't even gotten to where parents mostly would consider even having a conversation about this. So I basically say in the single digits, you better have these conversations. That's a tall order. That's a hard sell. Before they are 10-ish, we need to have these conversations. And then there's no such thing as the talk. It's 1,000 little micro conversations. It's little moments we were able to talk through. My daughter one time was like, when am I going to get a penis? You're not. The conversation's over. Boy, girl, done. Doesn't have to be, okay, let me get the anatomy book out and let's go through a lecture. No, they don't care yet. So here we get into a more descriptive anatomy, and we start talking about the M word, masturbation. If we're not careful, we're like, well, I'm not going to bring it up because I don't want them to ever know about it. Well, good luck with that. Let's talk about it ahead of time and say, you're going to actually find that this is pleasurable, and I hope you won't, but when you do, let's talk. And we start removing shame, and we have a conversation. And I have in my book kind of a script that I use with young men and also teenagers to talk through what you're doing and why, the heart behind what you're doing. To get them to a point where they see, you know what, I want that, which is a good relationship, and this is a barrier to that, and I don't want to do this anymore. Wow, it's funny how temptation and struggle can decrease when I put things in the right order versus just stop it. When I was teaching in Georgia, I had the counselors did a chapel, so they had a few counselors on stage, and they were answering questions from students, college students. And so one of them was on masturbation, and the counselor, I was second year teaching, and this was 20 years ago. The counselor literally on stage in front of 1,000 students says, ask Dr. Gilbert, he's an expert at that. Thanks. And so I, for like a year or two, I hear what you're an expert at. We need to talk about this. It needs to be something that's lighthearted and funny and real and also serious and, hey, stewardship. How are you managing your heart, your behavior, your thought life? These are really critical, guys and girls, because this is increasing for young ladies as well. Discuss sexual identity. What does it mean to be you? And no, because you're a girl that likes football doesn't mean, and a boy that likes playing dress up, whatever. We need to really just kind of decouple some of these things and talk through, here's who God made you. What are you going to do with that? And I'm one that went into a primarily female field, shrink. And that was a tough, going through school and going through all this stuff, but it's been amazing to watch. Like my wife, her counseling model would be a 2x4 across the head. Get over it. Grow up. I'm like, that's why you do your thing. And I do mine because we have different skill sets, which is so cool. And we each have that as well in terms of our work. We talk about dignity and modesty at this stage. We got a bag of clothes in the mail from one of our cousins, and in it's this little tiny sports bra. My wife goes, under or over? And I'm like, under. And my little tiny daughter, no breasts yet, okay, but what did we start? We started that idea of, no, that's underclothes. And other families disagree, and other families do things different. My parents were so strict. The first thing my middle sister bought when she got to college was a bikini. And then she walks in the dorm to the lobby and goes, Corey, look what I got, and starts to raise her shirt. And I'm like, stop it, somebody cover her up. Because these things shape us, and it can go too far. But it also is important to understand that for women to have their choices and understand why, but for young men to actually have theirs. So like back to that first story, before that girl went flying down the hill, there were a number of girls in sports bras, and Blaze literally walked up to one guy and goes, "Why is she wearing that?" Because he has no filter. And the guy's like, "Because she's hot." And he's like, "Which one?" Hot or hot? Didn't understand. And we talked through, Blaze, you have no say about what she's wearing. You can look or not. But so the idea of stewardship too. We're planting seeds here about the kind of young men you're going to be and the kind of young woman you're going to be. So that we're dealing now with things to help prevent some of the battles that adolescents are going to potentially bring. We're talking about periods, wet dreams prep. Kelly's in the bathroom having her period, and I'm standing there with Blaze and Miley going, "Mom's in there. This is her period. This is what's happening." A guy, talks to too many young women who thought they were dying when their period started because no one had ever talked to them about it.
Because you're talking about, the differences kind of with your wife and you. So how would you explain kind of what you talk to your kids about? Like, is it the dad versus the mom? Or?
Great question. So dad versus mom, it's going to be depending on the couple. I have friends where the wife is going to be more confident in some of this, and she does all of it for boys and girls. Others, it's kind of split kind of evenly, if you will. Dad deals with the guys. And for me, I deal with all of it. My wife won't touch it. So my wife finally did Passport to Purity with my daughter, which actually helped her get more confident about it. So it's led to more conversations with our daughter from her that she really hadn't had before. I did. So again, every family's got to figure that out. And that's where, if I won't do it, partner with someone that can. And I wouldn't do it with the school. Partner with someone that can. That's where I've actually had, like a single dad one time was like, "Here, can you please talk to my kids? My wife's passed away. Help me." And so I sat down with these kids and talked about masturbation and talked about these things, knowing they weren't ready. Another mom who, I think she was 10 years old, had been sexually abused by their brother. And so I talked to her, but then I talked to the mom and said, "Let me share with you what's next." That she doesn't understand what happened to her yet. And she's going to reach a day where she's going to have a file to put that in, and she's going to be like, "What happened to me?" And she's going to have two paths, and we don't want either one. Promiscuity or completely shut down. How do you help her thrive, grow, blossom? And so prepping the mom to actually deal with that coming up is a hard one. Lots of single parent conversations to be able to deal with this. Again, I would even say as pastors and as leaders, it's amazing what they'll trust you with. So for us to strengthen ourselves, to have some of these hard conversations. Now, not the confidentiality piece, more the protecting yourself piece is another aspect of that. Having the conversation. I know as men, it's harder to have certain conversations. But having just a window in your door isn't enough. At your office door. I honestly would recommend recording everything nowadays. I have a camera in my office that records everything. I have a huge hard drive that's just 24 hours recording because we live in a litigious world, very, very litigious world. So getting a system where the cameras are just there and normal, it really deters people from suing. Just knowing, and I pointed out, when they walk in my office, my office has been an RV for the last 5 years. I have a camera there, and they see it, and I'm like, it's aimed at me, but they see it, and then it's recording, it's less likely to have. In all my 25 years of work, I've had 2 women say, "I don't want to be recorded," and I stood them up and escorted them out to the front of the church and never saw them again, because you're the ones I'm afraid of. So protecting yourself is important as well. But you may be the person that God uses in that family to sit down and talk about the birds and the bees, having these hard conversations. How can you partner with a family and say, "We'll be glad to partner with you. I'm not doing it. I'm partnering with you," is a critical thing. Talking about some of these, or even like sexual reproduction. Another interesting point is actually personality is set in stone by age 7. A kid's personality is set in stone by age 7. What changes it after age 7? Trauma. Careful what you pray for. Sometimes what has to happen for that kid to get it My middle guy, actually, this guy Blaze, he is so hard-headed. Him and I will go at each other, and even my wife's like, "Who's the adult here? I can't tell." But he'll go at me, and I'll go at him, and I've told him many times, "You're not listening. Someone else is going to have to cut you down to size." And it's been fun to watch. His Boy Scout troop, his friends have really grown him up, having a job. He worked here at Corbin at 14 in the cafeteria washing dishes. And he is an extremely social person. So he learned, I hate being in places where I am not social. It drove him crazy. Where my oldest son worked at Chick-fil-A and was like, I hate people. Not a good place to work. And so if they could have just swapped, it would have been great. But part of even the work is figuring out themselves and personality. And my oldest loves a field. Give him a field and go work out in the middle of nowhere. And so he's done a lot of farm work and really enjoyed that. But by age 7, when do dads tend to engage with their son especially? Around age 6 or 7, when they can throw a ball. Dads, we've missed the window. And as a young dad for me, I looked at all my professor friends, this is in Georgia, and I'd see every single one of them had a wayward child. And almost every single one of them had been in ministry. And oftentimes in that season of ministry, they were absent during these first few years, many years of life. Dads, the role is so critical. And the thing is, then we get to Mother's Day and we go, Mothers, yay! Then we get to Father's Day and we go, you suck! Careful with that. Mother's Day should be every day anyway, but Father's Day, dads, we need to band together. Yet most churches have a very struggling men's ministry because it's hard. Most men I know have 0 friends. 0. And that means the whole weight of the world is on their wife if they're married. That is not good for her. That's not healthy for her. I did that. I got married and I thought Kelly is it. And did that for a few years. And one day she actually reached out and found a mentor, and it changed everything for her. Joined community Bible study. Incredible, the gift of these women speaking into her, but it took a while for me to get the clue. And then there's a guy at church that had a motorcycle and another one, and we got together and we would ride together. And so in Georgia, we did 6 or 7 years, and then they came out here and did around Oregon for our 10th year. And that was the hardest part about leaving Georgia, was this group of minivan driving, Jesus loving, no tattoos bikers. And it was incredible fellowship. And then here it's been Boy Scout dads. I've done Boy Scouts for 13 years. And the keyword Boy Scouts, not Scouting America, which they call it now. We do Boy Scouts. So my oldest is an Eagle Scout. And it's under men's ministry at Salem First Baptist. And it is only dads. Moms are not allowed. It's a different model because most of the troops are ran by moms. Why? It's men mentoring sons. We love single parents. Why? I tell the mom, you're not invited. And she's like, thank you. And what's crazy is some of our moms are more outdoorsy than all of us dads put together. They've hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. They've done stuff because it's not about that. It's about raising young men that love Jesus and that actually have some skills. And so it becomes, these things really become important. This is another really hard one, boyfriend, girlfriend. We don't talk about this when they're teenagers. It's too late. They're going to fight you on everything. We plant the seed. So for us, when our kids were little, you start dating your junior or senior year of college. That's the time you can start dating. And it was more to be facetious, but it's like, stop with the pressure to think you're supposed to. And my oldest actually did a lot of rebelling. We had a lot of struggle in high school with lying and him doing things he shouldn't, and a girl pursuing him and sending actually not so great pictures and having to deal with all that. And so it gets hard. They're not like, okay, sure, I'll do what you want. We know that. But we plant the seeds when they're younger so that when they're 16, 17, they look at it. And so like Blaze actually has liked this one girl at our homeschool co-op and has decided, you know what, I want to go to Corbin and I want to start and not have that yet. I want to be able to focus on building friends, and it's been neat to watch him navigate this as he's now a year away from coming here. And what does that look like? My oldest is in college in Colorado and has his first girlfriend, and they're actually second, and they're serious, and we'll see what happens. But what is it like to be a friend? Let's talk more about pornography, the impact of pornography, the draw of pornography. Why is it such a big deal, and why is it a killer? And talk to many therapists, and almost every sex therapist, which is what I am. They will encourage you to use pornography and enjoy it. And it's just pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. I'm like, that's why who you get advice from matters. And so to me, part of my heart is, as especially in pastoral ministry, how to strengthen pastors, because to me, that should be the front lines, not shrinks. Because I would not trust a lot of Christian counselors even. I'll talk about that more in the session on the trans at 12:30, because it's not okay what we're seeing and what's happening. When you talk about trauma and abuse, we need to talk through what that looks like, what happens to the heart, the body. We're planting seeds again prior to 10, and that they are under authority. This is a really critical piece of that puzzle. And 11 to 17. What about this stage? Now the talk. No. Now we're reinforcing what we've talked about, and we're talking to a young adult. There's a biblical counseling book. I forgot the author's name. I think it's one of the Tripp brothers, but looks at adolescence. It's called The Age of Opportunity. Is it Paul Tripp? Yeah, David Paul Tripp. Such a great picture. Adolescence is not hang on for dear life. There's some of that sometimes, because I jokingly say that I need to just sit at my kids' feet and learn from them, because they're so smart and they know it all. But it's a time of incredible adventure. Like my oldest, Alex, this is an Eagle Scout project. On his 18th birthday, him and I were skiing at Hoodoo, night skiing. It was complete whiteout. It was like 17 degrees, the best night we ever had. And he FaceTimes his grandparents. His grandparents were like, "What? It's your 18th birthday and you're with your dad?" And I'm like, yeah. I hadn't thought about that, but it was kind of cool, because that's built through adolescence, through adventure and time together. This is where we get into identity, and it's so much more than sexual. That you're fearfully and wonderfully made. As a believer, your body is a temple. Every other sin you commit is outside your body. So the stewardship of the kind of young man or young woman you are in this stage, and that you are not a mistake, not trapped in the wrong body, but you have a unique personality. What does that look like? How God wired you? And what are you going to do with that? Because it's actually changeable by choices, but we don't act that way in terms of that. Understanding sexual reproduction. Refraining from sexual immorality. Who are your idols? Who influences you? Further conversations about dating, courting, boundaries. Again, about pornography. Managing social media is more of what we talk about in this stage. How are you treating others? And then what does the Bible say, not mom and dad and social media, about things? Really using Scripture to answer questions. There's a deepening of identity. Are you kind, respectful? What's your work ethic? Yes, talking about these letters, LGBTQIA+, understanding the hurt and the lost when I don't quite fit and something's wrong. We got to deal with that right where it's at. Beware of decisions that cannot be unmade. And maintaining integrity of your convictions and what God is saying. One of the things that I did with Alex, because he's a homeschool kid especially, I do recommend this, but this is hard. And this might be a tall sell to even mention. But because he's actually never walked into a school, which he's in college now, so he's called his mom and said thank you. He did it. He's doing well. But I sat down and I watched this show with him. This was rough. 13 Reasons Why is a rough show. I don't like season 3. 1 and 2 are strong, but they're heavy. A lot of stuff that you don't want to sit and watch. But we would watch one episode and we would talk for an hour or two. A few weeks later, we'd watch an episode and talk. And the story of this is a girl who's died. She's killed herself, and she leaves 13 cassette tapes as to why she killed herself to the 13 people that knew something. And there was one that knew enough that could have prevented it, the school counselor, who did not do what they're supposed to do. And so it's important to talk through, this is real. Episode 12, it's a rough one because they show a rape scene. It's very well filmed, like it's not graphic, but it shows that light going off in her. And then she kills herself. And it's important conversation pieces. Some families avoid media at all costs. We go, okay, let's sit and talk. Let's sit. We're watching one of the singing shows. I forgot which one it was. And this girl and boy get up to sing, and they sing together, and it's twin girls, and one had transitioned to be a boy. And Blaze is like, what? Pause. Let's talk through that. And so we use these things to have conversations. A book that I would really emphasize for this stage, too, is this book that just came out in 2024, Get Married. Brad Wilcox, research, packed full of research, and basically saying we need to encourage marriage. Stop discouraging marriage. He talks about getting married, you accumulate much greater wealth than people who don't. There's more meaningful lives compared with single and childless peers. We before me approach to married life are happier and less divorce prone. You forge a family first marriages. They're characterized by frequent date nights, family fun time, and chores done with the kids, and they enjoy the happiest marriages. Vodi Bakum, one of the pastors I love to listen to and love his work, he says this: I raise my sons to be husbands and fathers and my daughters to be wives and mothers. He's like, they may not get married, but that's going to be a primary way I'm going to raise them. And we need to change the way everything's career. Because I talk to young women all the time, even here, who go, I'm not sure why I'm here. I just want to be a wife. And I'm like, why did you say the word just? That's not okay. Why are you here? So you have a brain. I love my wife. She's so smarter than I'll ever be. And she's been a stay-at-home mom for 17 years. She went back to work 2 months ago, which I don't like it. She's at Hope Pregnancy Center. And it's neat to see she's loving it. That's a new change for our family. But to be able to have been home has been an incredible blessing. This is the anxious generation, his things he prescribes. No smartphones before high school, 14, I'd say later. No social media before 16, he actually says preferred 18. Phone-free schools, and then far more free play and independence. Encouraging, and I would actually add there even work when it comes to that. And how critical this is to raise up young men and young women who actually have skills, who have a vision for something, like something they want to stand for, passion, and are willing to even just take those risks. There's a professor, I think it was at Yale, who had realized, this was a few years ago, that none of the boys had ever had been on a date in her class. And so she made an assignment: go on a date sober, ask a girl on a date sober, go on the date sober, come home sober, and I'll give you extra credit. Because these guys had like 20 sexual partners but had never been on a date. And that's becoming more normal. We have to combat that by talking about these topics, about what are you doing matters, what you think about matters, how you're treating others matters. And we start this in the birth to 5 and really that 6 to 9, 10-ish, which is what I want to kind of emphasize there. Why? Because either I do or someone else does. So we need to help empower those we serve to have these conversations and partner with them. And then that's the QR code to this and other stuff, if that helps you. And thank you so much for coming.